Question to Annabel Goldie.
To ask the First Minister when he will next meet the Secretary of State for Scotland.
First Minister.
No plans to meet the Secretary of State in the near future.
Annabel Goldie.
Presiding Officer, we've seen the worst winter weather in November for 40 years, and I want to pay tribute to all our public service workers in transport, in our hospitals, in our GP surgeries. And perhaps, Presiding Officer, very especially our care workers who have battled through the snow to reach the most vulnerable in our communities. But does the First Minister agree that a powerful message can be sent from this Parliament, that there is a duty on us all, those of us who are fit and able, to keep an eye on, to lift the phone to the elderly, frail neighbour and see if we can help? Now, the First Minister and I don't always agree, but on this occasion, will he join with me in saying this is a time for us all to muck in?
First Minister.
Can I congratulate Annabel Goldie in turning to what is the dominating issue of this week, and also in the way she has put forward her comments. Can I agree, for example, Perth and Kinross Council, despite the extraordinary conditions, have managed to reach all but 2 of the social care clients who are being cared for by neighbours in exactly the spirit of volunteerism that Annabel Goldie mentions. In this very Parliament, I know of one of our security guards who got up crack of dawn, actually long before the crack of dawn, at 4 a.m, picked up 4 of his colleagues in his 4x4 and brought them in for the early shift in this Parliament. I don't like to single out individual newspapers, but the Sun's double-page spread today on Sub-Zero Heroes, which had examples after example round Scotland of people in public services and people contributing, going above the ball, not just beyond the call of duty, but contributing, is an excellent example that people in this Parliament should read, and we should all try to emulate. It is exactly the sort of spirit that is required to get Scotland through these difficult times.
Annabel Goldie.
I am grateful to the First Minister, and indeed we do read that 4 out of 5 people have made it to work this week, and that is indeed incredible. But one group particularly challenged by this weather is parents. Now, tens of thousands of them, willing to battle to work, have found themselves coping with numerous councils imposing a blanket closure of every school. Now, the safety of children and teachers is paramount, and of course individual judgments must be made. But surely, Presiding Officer, that is the point. We should trust our head teachers to make the right decision for their school and their pupils. Does the First Minister agree that such a blanket closure policy is obstructive and inappropriate, causing huge and avoidable disruption to thousands of families across the country? We need local judgment, so why can't we trust our head teachers?
First Minister.
I know that Annabel Goldie will have seen the advice from the Education Secretary, which has gone out to every education authority in Scotland today. That lays stress on the importance of the head teacher being the key decision maker to make these decisions, also the importance of the decisions being made as early as possible in order to give parents notice. I should say to Annabel Goldie, the position around the schools of Scotland is significantly better than it was yesterday, that 13 of our authorities have all their schools open, 13 out of 32 today, and many people, where it is left in terms of best practice to head teachers, you have some extraordinary stories. I mean, Fetter Angus, for example, in my constituency, where the head teacher, John Black, has heroically, in mountains of snow, kept the school open all this week, until today, it should be said, when the elements have finally overcome him. But nonetheless, that has been deeply appreciated by the parents and people of that village. It does stress the point that the head teacher should be the key decision maker, because they are the best placed to assess the conditions. No child, obviously, should be sent to school in dangerous conditions, but the parents are in the best position to assess that, just as the head teachers are in the best position to assess the safe conditions around the school. I know that best practice, where it has been applied across many of our local authorities, is being encouraged by the Education Secretary to be applied to all our local authorities. And the one thing I would say, that while I agree with the tenor of Annabel Goldie's question, we should remember that people have had to make extremely difficult decisions and extremely difficult timescales, and we should reflect on that as well as, I hope, supporting the advice that has gone out from the Education Secretary across the educational authorities of Scotland.
Question 3, Tavish Scott.
Presiding Officer, can I ask the First Minister what issues will be discussed at the next meeting of his Cabinet?
First Minister.
Issues of importance to the people of Scotland.
Tavish Scott.
Presiding Officer, the First Minister will know that there is to be a review of how transport operators are coping with the weather, announced by the UK Government this morning, to report before Christmas. The weather was forecast. Operators responsible for roads, railways and runways knew snow was coming, and indeed it would last. What action, therefore, is the Scottish Government planning to consider how ready Scotland is to keep people, goods and emergency services moving?
First Minister.
We reviewed all parts of resilience after last winter's conditions. That's why, for example, we've got 2 months' supply of grit and salt in Scotland at the present moment, even under heavy usage conditions. I'm concentrating, as the government ministers are, as so many other people in Scotland are, about getting through these conditions. We'll be perfectly happy to have any number of reviews or parliamentary examinations, but right now, the priority is to get on with the job and allow as many people in Scotland to get on with their jobs. That's the priority at the present moment.
Scott.
Thank you. Aberdeen and Dundee airports on the east of Scotland are open. They've had constant snow over recent days, but to the operators' credit, they're open. Highlands Islands airports, owned by the government, to their credit, are open. Scots fly to Oslo, Stockholm and Amsterdam in winter, in snow. These airports are geared up. But Edinburgh Airport spends millions on drop-off charging lanes and ever more shops, but not enough on essential equipment. The First Minister's government is pushing Scotland as a winter fun destination. It's good for tourism, the economy and jobs, but not if visitors can't get here. So what will the government do to make sure that all Scotland's airports have appropriate winter contingency plans? And wouldn't the best thing for Scotland be a capital city airport with a 365-day-a-year operation, which invests in essential equipment and particularly in the hard-working staff to make that happen?
First Minister.
Well, as Tavistock well knows, even despite the extraordinary efforts that are made across our Highland airports and indeed Aberdeen Airport, they're not open 365 days a year, 24 hours. Sometimes the weather overtakes them. In defence of British Airports Authority, I know, for example, because the Transport Minister has been in fairly constant touch with the airport operators, that they, for example, own Glasgow Airport as well, and Edinburgh Airport has had 5 times the amount of snow falling that Glasgow Airport has. That has been an extremely difficult circumstance. In terms of the general tenor of his question, if we take away the lack of allowance for the extraordinary conditions, I witnessed, as we all witnessed, the efforts that were being made yesterday to clear the runways at Edinburgh Airport. They seemed very extensive efforts. Then there is an aspect of his question which I do have some sympathy with, and that is there are certain areas of Scotland and certain airports in Scotland, because they are more used to the sort of conditions that are now being visited upon all of Scotland, who by definition have perhaps better preparation in line, and that may be a lesson for Edinburgh Airport. But the overall position, I would argue, is they've been subjected to exceptional conditions. I see substantial efforts being made to clear that runway, and we all hope that Edinburgh Airport will be open later today.